Nicholas.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very warm welcome to the brand new Human Gardener stage here at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. My name is Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional plant botherer or horticulturist, and my job is to interview and celebrate on this stage some of the wide breadth, depth and variety that we have in the horticultural world. I'm here with my friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator at a local arboretum, and we've basically asked some of our most interesting friends to come and talk for 15 minutes. So you can stop pulling faces, Nicholas. I can see you out the corner of my eye. To bring people in, so you can have a 15-minute sit down, because we all need a sit down at a flower show, don't we? Sit down, a chat, and hopefully find something out that's new and interesting and different to what you normally see. So if you're ready for this one, we are now going to interview a show gardener, Nick Fryer from Nicholas Edwards Gardens. Nick has been building show, commercial and domestic gardens for more years than any of us would care to admit to, assisting in the build of 2 gold medal winning Chelsea gardens, is that correct?
Yes.
And a number of other gold medal winning exhibits here and elsewhere. He's going to talk to us about his experiences of landscaping and building show gardens, and hopefully give us some top pointers and hints about what to look for in a top-notch show gardener. So a very, very warm welcome to Nick Fryer, the show gardener.
Thank you very much.
So then, Nick, are you ready for this?
I think so.
I have to say, we all are quite good friends. So we kind of, at the moment, we know quite a lot of juicy stuff about Nick, actually, that we could share, we might not share. So, absolutely, you've come to the right talk. Absolutely.
I feel I've been duped into this.
So then, Nick, how exactly did you get into landscaping?
I sort of fell into it when I was 14, and my parents needed a shed building in the garden, and we started building the shed, and one thing led on to another, and another friend's mum wanted a fence putting up, and one thing led to another. Patios were laid, plants were planted, and here we are 22 years later, still at it.
So you do a lot of domestic gardens, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, primarily that's where we started, in the domestic market.
But you also do the show gardens, don't you?
Yes, so in 2014, I popped my show garden cherry here at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show, and it's just escalated from there.
What was that garden?
It was, I can't even remember what it was called now. It was.
I don't think I came to that one.
No, I don't think you did.
I think that's
I can't
you were
even
there.
remember the name of the garden. Actually, it was Breathing Space.
Okay.
Breathing Space.
And what was that about?
It was little. Again, it was very naively done.
Yeah.
I'd done it on a shoestring budget. My ex-wife had signed me up to the Harrogate Flower Show. I thought I was actually coming to the Yorkshire Show.
Right.
And I was very surprised when I arrived to see the level of professionalism. And I dropped my trailer off and left site. And I wasn't sure if I was going to come back and complete the garden, but thankfully I did.
Yeah.
It crashed and burned. I got a silver medal, but
You got silver?
Silver.
That's all right.
Silver
That's
still
good.
good. That's great for
Good
the first
start.
garden.
but I started the networking process and impressed some other people around us. And
You got the bug, didn't you?
got the bug,
You
exactly.
got the bug.
Yes.
And once you've done a show garden, you can't not do a show garden, can you?
Well, you say that.
We say that every year. We're not coming back to
There's
do
a
it
lot
again.
I've seen not come back.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because whenever I see you, instead of saying what are you doing at the flower show, I say how many gardens are you doing at the flower
absolutely.
show. So how many have you done this year, Nick?
3
Three this year.
3 show gardens.
Which you started building
Last Tuesday.
last Tuesday. So he's built them in a week, less than a week.
It's quite a tight time frame here with the
Yeah.
7 days. It's tough.
And it's the very, very start of the
It
show
warms
season
you
as
up
well.
for the rest of the year. Yeah, I mean, luckily this year I'm not doing Chelsea or Hampton Court or Tatton. But when you roll on from Harrogate to Chelsea,
Yes, push it
Sorry.
closer.
sorry, is
Unbelievably,
that better?
people think you're not loud enough.
It's the only time I've ever seen him be this quiet. I'm enjoying it. I was just sitting back enjoying that, actually.
Yes, normally when you roll on to the Chelseas and the Hamptons and such afterwards, it's a very intense, long period of hard work. But 2 weeks to get these 3 up, and now I can have a rest once we've broken down.
I think the great thing about the show gardens is you start off with a completely blank canvas, don't you?
Completely blank patch of grass.
Literally, a patch of grass, and it's a full garden that looks like it's been sitting there forever, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, again, when you do them really well, a lot of people do
Like
think
you
you've planted around existing structures on the showground, but that's when you know you've nailed it.
Yeah. Do you know exactly how many show gardens you've actually built in your career? so far?
No.
Rough
Is
guess.
the answer. 40, 50?
40, 50? That's a lot of show gardens.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
lot of stress.
Yes. Well, again,
It can be high pressure,
again,
can't
it
it?
is high pressure, which I enjoy. And again, you get used to it. It just becomes your job,
Yeah.
your day to day.
Yeah.
So I guess it's in some respects the pressure is
Yeah.
released because you've been there, you've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, inevitably you're going to come up against surprises
Yeah.
and curveballs, but you just learn to adapt
Yeah.
and be reactive.
So tell us about the process of the show garden. So you come up with an idea, a design.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It depends whether you've been commissioned by someone else
Yeah.
that's given you a brief to fit,
Yeah.
or you're designing yourself.
Yeah.
Again, for this show, for instance, this year, we were asked to do one for the Fat Badger, so we had to somehow promote the pub.
Yeah.
So the concept is born from that idea.
Yeah.
And obviously, with the character of the badger, it sort of lent itself
Yeah.
to a woodland bar.
Yeah.
With woodland characters.
And it's fantastic.
Yeah, but again,
Have you all
again,
seen?
just-
Have you seen the Fat Badger Garden up at the top there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you just
No?
think you're going stir
It's
crazy
fantastic.
sometimes.
It's like a bar in the middle of a woodland. Just up at the top. Don't go yet, but if you can head towards the bandstand. It's right opposite the bandstand, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Super.
Again, you've got relatively flexible with how big a plot you go for. Obviously, you can't go too small because it'll disappear. Yeah, well, again, being asked to do 3, I'm trying to manage my time. So again, I've kept 3 gardens relatively simple this year because of the time constraints. So yeah, we've kept them relatively small. But it's nice to go big. Sometimes going big is actually easier than doing a small garden.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a team behind me. I mean, again, I've done show gardens solely before in the past, but yeah, especially when you do 3, you need hands on deck.
There's a member of your team sitting at the back there, hiding. Owen. Hello, Owen.
Yeah, Owen
Hi,
Gregory is right hand man.
The man behind the badger. So you've done the Fat Badger. What are the other 2 gardens?
We did
that you've
Scorched
done?
Earth and we did the Stray Garden with a cenotaph with a
Okay.
floral bedding.
Okay, and were they judged this year?
Yes, they were. Yeah,
What did you get?
it's been judged differently this year. Instead
Yeah.
of getting these silvers, golds, and such, they've gone for roses. But essentially, I mean, we can break it down to one rose being bronze, 2 silver, 3 silver gilt. So I've got a silver gilt and 2 golds this year.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Woohoo, well done. So, what do you love most about your job?
I guess it's thinking out the box. It's the fact it's
Yeah.
eclectic. When I started when I was choosing my career, I actually wanted to be a joiner, bench joiner.
Right.
But when starting into it, I just got sick of doing the same thing day in, day out. So I guess it's the fact you're doing something different every day. I mean, obviously, certain skill sets cross, and you end up doing a lot of paving and a lot of fencing, that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
every day is different, essentially. Obviously, when the weather's like this, there's no better place to be. But you take the rough with the smooth in this country landscaping.
Last year was slightly different, wasn't
Slightly
it?
different, yeah.
The weather was a bit dodgy
a
last
bit up
spring.
and down, but you
Was.
take the rough with the smooth. That's it is,
Absolutely. So, have you got any of your show gardens going on from the flower show? So, quite often you take a project, don't you? You build it at the show, and then it actually finds a home.
I mean, that's the ideal, is that you're taking these out of the show garden. They're not going to skips. They're going onwards to a new home, and that's the dream.
Yeah.
But often it's not the case,
Yeah.
And again, even with some of the bigger Chelsea gardens, that you'll be under the illusion of it being rebuilt. The reality is you can't take them out without
Yeah.
smashing them to pieces.
Yeah.
So it's a bit smoke and mirrors in that respect. But luckily, the Scorched Earth sleeper detail is going to
Yeah.
my next job in Ripon.
So, the Scorched Earth, I think it's fascinating. I absolutely love that garden. I think it's so great. Tell us a little bit more about the story, because a lot of our gardens, the show gardens that we build, there's always a story behind them,
Yes,
isn't
I mean
there?
sometimes there is. Sometimes there is. With Scorched Earth, it's just a bit of a statement. It's about global warming and what we're doing to this planet. It's our human. What's the word? Impact on the planet, and we're getting to that point where there is a line in the sand, and if we don't
Yeah.
change our ways now,
Yeah.
what does the future hold? So I think it was a bit of a visual statement.
Yeah, and the garden really portrays that,
Well,
I think,
I hope
because you've
so.
got a really living side of it
Yes,
versus...
the lush green and the almost desert-like
Yeah,
results
yeah.
of what's to come.
Yeah, it's quite powerful.
Well, I hope so. I'm glad you
I'm
think
impressed,
so.
well done.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you. The judges weren't.
Damn you. We could have a word. So, out of all the gardens you've done, what would be your most favourite garden? show garden
The
that you've ever built?
my favourite garden I've ever built was Breckland Beauty at Gardeners World Live in 2018. For several reasons. One, it was a very, very naturalistic approach. The idea with it was that we were creating, again, a garden in a woodland setting, which is always fun to do. But the idea was that for the hard landscaping we'd put into the green space, we actually lifted it up and put it onto the green roof of the structure we put in. So we replaced more green space than what we took out by construction.
Yeah.
But again, it came about. We were building at Chelsea for Joe Thompson, and there was a free space at Hampton Court 3 weeks down the line. So actually, during the week of the show, we came back and designed this garden, hypothetically, not really knowing if we were going to be able to pull it off in the time frame, because we only had 3 weeks before the show started. So it was a real knife edge design and construction, and we ended up getting one of the 5 golds out of the 30 gardens there. So
well done.
within 3 weeks we pulled it off. So we built for 2. We had 3 weeks to build, but we did it in 2 because we spent a week prefabbing the structure. Oh yeah, I mean, people can spend an entire year going into the planning of these things. Again, the budget will be dictated by either the client or what's in your pot. Again, for that garden, we had no money between us. It was a collaboration between me and a friend, Jodie Lidgard. So that was the biggest challenge, was how are we going to fund this garden? You can get sponsors, yeah, but not within 3 weeks of the show starting.
No pressure.
So, again, for these, I've got a relationship with Mike J.A. Jones in Preston. So he's provided us the lion's share of the plants for free. So they're on loan and they will go back. A lot of the time, it's very difficult to get plant sponsors. So that is one of your big costs of a show garden, is actually providing the plants and getting stock that's show ready. You know, planting at Harrogate's always a challenge because it's so early in the season. So you've got a very limited stock, as it were, to go at that's show ready.
You can always pop to Homebase, can't you?
As Faith did several times this year.
I had to.
There are actually nurseries that specialise in show plants,
Yes.
and they grow on commission and they grow to order, but you need to put the order in 6 months to a year in advance.
Yes, yeah.
And there are now tree nurseries, particularly in the south, that will rent show trees for your garden and develop and bring it in, because again, that's another expense. Is some of the show gardens, they will charge you every time
They
you
move a
use a
tree.
forklift truck. They'll charge you £15 a time, and if you say no, turn it round, that's another £15. So you bring in a specialist with the equipment, and they will plant them for you.
Again, trying to move some of those big trees is a very specialist skill in its own right. You know.
And the plants alone are really high quality, aren't they? So tell us a little bit more about show plants.
Again, it's tricky, like you say, Sarah. There's a lot of specialist growers that will prep plants for the show, but again, and it comes down to the designer's choice really, in what you pick out of the nurseries, and then you sit there polishing leaves and preening stock to go into the
Hairdryer.
borders.
Yeah.
Hairdryer. Last year I was at Tatton Park, gold medal winning garden, and
just got in there.
just drop that one in there. Just drop that one in there. And I spent the best part of a day going round a tree that we had selected and was perfect, but not all of the leaves were coming through, and we realised that quite a lot of them had just died back slightly. So I spent a whole day pruning and pruning and pruning ever so slightly, just millimetres off each of the branches to make them perfect. And we were despairing that it was Colrutia, tree of heaven, so beautiful plant, but we were despairing because there was no sign of any of the flowers coming out. And the day before the show we saw a flower at the very, very top, so we were there with hairdryers trying to warm the environment, trying to encourage. We put quite a lot of fertilizer on, and we were just warming them to get a couple of them out, and they did come out just in time for judging.
Yeah, again, we often at Chelsea we'll feed the plants with tomato feed and make up a sugar water to basically give them like a Lucasade Sport sugar boost, just to get them looking their best.
There's an awful lot of manipulation, isn't there? In
Absolutely.
show gardening?
I mean, again, we've wrapped iris flower heads in wet tissue and elastic bands to release them just before the show opens, so they actually bloom for judging.
Yeah,
because
There's
it's
little
a show
tricks of the
garden.
trade,
It's a show. It's about creating the illusion of perfection. If you planted most show gardens in a garden, you would have nice plants for a week, for that week.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the year, you wouldn't have that interest and variety and diversity.
Well, this is a bit of a gripe of mine, because actually when you plant a show garden, exactly like you say, it's not real. It's not
No,
real.
it's
When
not.
I did my first show garden, I planted it like you would plant a normal garden, and
Yeah.
it crashed and burned. So that actually the judges want something that's not actually real. You know, they want it.
Yeah.
It's basically you're painting a pretty picture for the week.
Yeah.
But again, if you were to plant like that in normal life, it just would
It
not
wouldn't
work
work at
So-
all.
so
at all. Sorry. Yes.
Pretend,
Yeah. And it's essentially a snapshot in time, isn't it?
So what are the judges looking for? Because again,
I
as
have
me-
no idea, Sarah. I've
right,
been
okay.
doing
I think
this
it depends
for,
on the judge.
for
doesn't
8
it?
years, and I still haven't figured them out. I mean, again, the judges
They have
seem
criteria,
to be.
don't
well,
they?
it's essentially it's a personal opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so depending on the judge you get on the day, you can get, I think, very different results. So you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. You know, as
But-
long as you're pleased with what you put up.
But there are certain things that they look for. So they look at the quality of the hard landscaping as much as they look at the plants. And a lot of us will look at the flowers and go, oh, I've got that. Oh, that's lovely. But actually, the hard landscaping is as important.
And
but also,
they'll
that
actually
it's the
walk
brief.
on. They'll walk on the hard
garden,
landscaping
yeah.
as well. They will go and sit
Yeah.
on.
Make sure it doesn't wobble.
structures
I
and-
would say the biggest key is your brief. I always say
Yeah.
you win and lose your
Yeah.
garden in the brief, because essentially it's up to you to tell the judges what you're trying to achieve. So, if
just
you
explain what a-
if you overpromise in your brief,
Yeah.
then you're lining yourself up for a fall. Well, they can, because they're assessing your garden against the brief. We're not essentially judged against other gardens, so we can all award the same medals, because we're not in competition. But so yeah, you can win or lose your garden in the brief. If you overpromise, if you start telling them sort of emotions you're trying to invoke, you're lining yourself up for a fall.
So,
I
Nick,
would-
just for those that aren't aware, just explain what a show garden brief is.
Essentially, the brief is describing what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
the sense of space you're trying to achieve, the look you're trying to achieve, and obviously you need to give them a visual garden design.
And you submit it well before the show.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be months in advance. So the trick is to specify perhaps a colour theme, but not specify exact plants, because sometimes if the nurseries have run out of them, or if we've got an
Yeah.
early spring,
Well-
for those who were here last year, it was absolute flood, wasn't it?
Well,
Floodplain for the whole of the show.
Again-
and this year's fantastic.
Again, the Harrogate Flower Show blossom is normally reliably an Amelanchier.
Yeah.
Amelanchier.
But
yeah.
this year, when I went to the nursery 3
Yeah.
weeks ago, they were already in full
Been and
flower.
gone,
Yeah, they've
so
gone
that,
over.
so that'd be over. So again, that's another thing you get picked up on. If you put a blossoming tree in and it's gone over, then you're going to
Yeah.
lose points very quickly.
Yeah.
You know.
So the trick with your brief is to be as brief as
Keep
possible.
the brief as brief as possible.
Quite
Exactly.
literally. Yeah.
Do not overpromise.
So are there any sneaky little tricks that you do in your gardens that you shouldn't be telling people that you're going to share with us right now?
Again, it's all smoke and mirrors. I mean, again, how you build a garden normally and how you build a show garden are two completely different things. You know, it's all about how it looks on the surface, but what's going on underneath is completely different to how you'd normally build a garden. And that's what you learn over the years of doing it, is how
Yeah.
to achieve the finished look without going through the hard, laborious substrata work, you know?
So what we used to do, I used to teach at a local college, and the showground here is quite sloping, you may have noticed. And we found one year our garden, we built a wooden frame to put the garden into, and there was a drop of about 15 centimetres from front to back, which is quite significant when you're building a water feature, and it flooded the next door garden. And so what we did was we built up the kick frame to make that
Sabotage.
level. Theirs wasn't very good. Built it all level, and then we infilled, because that's a huge amount of compost. It's very expensive, and it's a huge amount of compost to be putting in, which might settle down. So we filled it with bags of compost, because then we
What,
could
in the bag? Yeah.
Yeah, in the bag. So we don't open the bags up, and we would build them up like bricks, and sink the plants still in their pots, and then top dress with
Yeah.
normally bark chipping, so we can then lift out those plants and reuse them, and it's easier to water them as well when they're contained in that way.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, there's not a single plant in those 3 gardens that have been taken out of the pot.
No.
So it's smoke and mirrors. Again, because we're trying to make it easy for ourselves on breakdown. Again, with Chelsea, when you build in Chelsea, you've got 3 weeks to build,
Yeah.
but you've got 4 days to break them out.
Yeah.
So it becomes complete carnage. So again, you're always trying to make your
Yeah.
life as easy as possible.
And the irony is that they ask you for an environmental statement about
Oh.
how you're going to recycle
Don't
everything.
get me
But again, if
started
you've
on
only
the
got 4 days to get a 3 weeks worth of garden of Chelsea perfection, where there are full swimming ponds and things like that in some of them.
Again, and that's the problem, because the judging criteria is so high at Chelsea, is you don't dare cut corners.
Yeah,
So
you can't.
every patio will be laid as it would be in the real in the real landscaping world.
Yeah.
So come breakdown. Hence why I say a lot of these rebuilds don't actually get rebuilt with the same materials that the gardens are. It's a bit again smoke and mirrors, sadly.
Yeah.
But again, for Harrogate, there's less pressure on the hard landscaping and more so on the planting. So
Yeah.
we get away with cutting a few more corners.
So
Don't tell Nick.
that's Nick Smith, show director over there. He's probably listening.
Oh, absolutely. A garden has to evolve. I mean, we can, as designers, we can come in and we can lay out the structure of it, and we can start the planting. But if we don't leave you any space as the client to take ownership of that garden, we haven't really done our job properly. It's nice to leave a project and actually inspire the client to take up the love for gardening themselves. And it does happen surprisingly often. But again, it's nice to then hand over ownership to the client and inspire the love of gardening in them. You know?
And there will always be, even if you're gardening for somebody who's never gardened, has got no interest, there will always be, at some stage, they'll say, I've been to Homebase and I've brought back this. And they've told you they want a pale pink and blue, ethereal, gentle garden, and they've brought back orange pansies. And you have to go, it's a bit like when your children bring craft home from school. You go, that's lovely, darling. Let's put that on the back of the fridge. But you do have to factor in that space, because again, if you've done your job properly, the garden breathes and plants spread and they evolve. And actually, if a plant isn't working after 5 years or so, take it out. It's compost, it's compostable, and it's an opportunity to put something else in and experiment a little bit. Gardens shouldn't be a thing in a picture frame that's perfect. They should be a living, breathing thing. And I'm sure that when all of us go home tonight, we go, maybe I should have mowed the lawn, I should have edged, because you've seen show gardens, but they're there to inspire and to give you ideas.
So just talking about inspiration, you're quite inspirational to young landscapers. You did Young Landscaper of the Year. You helped.
Well, again, we've set up a lot for the Young
Yeah.
Landscaper of the Year competition. Luckily, one of my apprentices 2 years ago won the Young Landscaper of the Year
Yeah, he did.
competition at Gardeners World Live, which I was extremely proud for him.
Amazing.
Good teaching.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to inspire the next generation. You like to think that you are demonstrating something that they can pick up, and again, that's what I'd like to go into from this next. Really, is we can't be on the tools forever.
No.
Yeah.
So to go into the teaching side and inspire the next generation is something I'd love to do. And I mean, I personally think to be good at this job, you need the whole picture. It's no good just being a hard landscaper or a horticulturalist or a garden designer. You need all three. Really, to design, I need to know how much it costs to build and understand the building process to meet a client's brief and budget. So what I'd like to do from this point on is really start some sort of apprentice-based school that would teach the maintenance, the design, the landscaping and the horticultural side, and then let them flourish and specialise from there.
Yeah,
really.
so if there's anybody out there wanting to go into landscaping, what would be a really good tip for them? Where would they go first?
I don't know exactly where you'd start, to be honest. Again, I started. We just started doing it, and you learn by your mistakes. I mean, Alistair Baldwin's now set up a fantastic course over in is it Harlow Car?
Harewood House.
Harewood House, sorry.
Yep, Harewood House Garden Design.
So again, I mean, sadly, a lot of the teaching seems to be down south, but hopefully we
Yeah.
can start to bring it up north and compete with them down south.
There are some apprenticeships around here for young landscapers, but again, the best thing you can do is find a good landscaper at a flower show and say to them, can I come and work for you?
Again,
can I work during the summer?
You can't learn this game from books. You've got to learn it hands-on. It's the only way you get stuck in and really understand how it all works.
Fantastic.
Great stuff.
Nick, you have been brilliant as always, and you've been very, very clean-mouthed, which we're very grateful for.
Thank you so much.
We're very grateful for.
Not
none
one
of the
blink.
stories and none of the swearing, so we're very pleased for that. Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very big round of applause to Nick Fryer of Nicholas Edwards Gardens, our professional landscaper.
Thank you.
Thank you. I gave up for a very good reason. I wasn't alky.
I need advice.
I think we're on. Ladies and gentlemen, while these two are gossiping, apologies for our slight delay. We're just recovering from lunch. A very, very, very warm welcome to the first ever brand new Human Gardener stage at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed yourselves so far and spent far too much on things you've got no room for in your gardens. That's why I'm sat on this stage. I've saved a fortune. We designed this because we wanted to have conversations and explore the breadth and the depth and the amazing variety and diversity within horticulture. It's stories that we don't always talk about. We're not very good at talking about what we do. But also we wanted something that was relatively quick and easy, so you can come and have a sit down before going and spending more money on the amazing things you'll see in the show. So hopefully you can have a lovely rest, learn something new and interesting, and get to meet somebody amazing. So I'm Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a horticulturist. This is my job, and I've been here at the show for the past 15 years doing show gardens and advice stand and various things like that. Faith Douglas is with me. She's a curator at an arboretum in North Yorkshire, and we've basically gathered up the most interesting people we can find. And I think this gentleman doesn't really need much of an introduction. I think you probably all know him already. But Jonathan is a phenomenal celebrity, innovative, demonstrative florist and floral artist. And I found out that his love of horticulture and everything floral started when he was 8. So wow. I think we need to find out a little bit more about that and hopefully find a little bit more about the man behind the flowers. So a very, very warm Harrogate welcome to Jonathan Mosley, our celebrity florist.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
So firstly, Jonathan, I need your shoes, which are amazing if you can't see them. They're absolutely stunning. But tell me, what happened at 8? What was your moment?
I got these shoes.
Oh, there you go.
At 8, yeah. Well, at 8, I started. My mum had my mum's friend had a flower shop, basically. She was a lady who had retired and, decided, like many people, she wanted a second career. So she opened a flower shop in a neighbouring village. And at 8, I would go along to this flower shop and be absolutely transfixed, transformed and hypnotised, really, by the power of flowers and just that amazing world that creative floristry brings.
Fantastic. And you then got your own glass house. You started growing, didn't you?
Yeah, now sort of, I feel like my life's been documented
This is your
so
life.
much here.
This is your
but
life.
yeah, at 11, I was given a greenhouse. And I was given a greenhouse for my 11th birthday, not because I'm a privileged silver spoon child, working class child. My granddad, who was a miner, moved from his council house to a council bungalow, leaving an enormous garden behind. And in those days, council houses had massive gardens, and it was a huge garden. And he had 3 big greenhouses at the bottom of his garden. And as a only grandchild, I was given a little bit of one of these greenhouses. So when he moved from this house, I was absolutely mortified at 11 because there was my own bit of garden that I created there, this greenhouse, and, the thought of losing it all. So my father and my mum and grandparents for my 11th birthday got me an 8x6 greenhouse, which was life-changing.
Oh, perfect. And what was the first thing you sowed in there?
The first thing I sowed, I was the bedding plant king.
Yeah.
These days I'd be the bedding plant queen. But in those days I was the bedding plant king. And I grew loads and loads of bedding plants. So it would be things like Tagetes, Nemesia, Petunia, Busy Lizzie's Impatience, and I grew with a voracious appetite, and I had a paraffin stove, so I was the kid at school who stinked of paraffin permanently. I was odd on many levels. And actually, this is something I talk about quite a lot when I go into horticultural colleges now and floristry colleges, that, if you've got something and you're interested in, you're passionate and you're not from a privileged background, you can make a success of it. And I actually grew bedding plants and produced a little bedding plant catalogue and took them around the village, and my mum and dad took it around the friends, and people placed orders, and I would pick out and do those plants. Then I started supplying the local village shop, and by the age of 17, I'd saved up enough money to buy my first car from growing bedding plants. So.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? And it is such an accessible industry as well. You don't have to have a high-end qualification. You just need a bit of a passion. And that's one of the things we're finding today is the people we're talking about and talking to have just found something and had a spark and met the right person at the right time who's helped to kindle that flame.
Yeah, definitely.
And where's it taken you? It's taken you around the world, hasn't it?
Yes, and I've been very lucky. I've had an amazing career. I've had loads of opportunities. There's not always been high notes. There's been low notes along that way. It's not an easy ride. And as you say, you can attain qualifications in a subject, but I do think if you have a passion and sort of an aptitude for something, to run with that and to go with that. And I would controversially say sometimes I think we live in an overqualified world.
Yeah, I agree.
Where qualifications don't count for absolutely everything. You can get a degree in floristry now. I would arguably say, do you need a degree in floristry? I've not got a degree in floristry. It's okay if you want to do that. That's absolutely fine. But I think we academize, is that a word?
Yeah.
It is now.
It is now, today. We over-academize sometimes our world, and I think that makes it prohibitive to people. And I think sometimes you just got to get out there and do it and learn yourself and learn along that route. And, that's what I've done, really.
And generally as well, gardeners and horticulturists and florists as well are very generous with their knowledge, whether it's they've given you a cutting of something, everyone's nodding, they give you a cutting, they give you a packet of seeds, they give you something that's really infested with a pest and go, here's this for your garden, and you spend 6 years trying to get rid of it. But generally, if you came here as a youngster and said, I'm passionate about floristry, there would be 50, 100 people here saying, we're here, we want to help.
Yeah, it's a supportive world.
It's a really it's a small world, but very supportive.
I think that's the nice thing about the horticultural world is it is a giving world. It's a world where you want to see people succeed. But I think it's a real world, and it's a world where you need to make people realise it's not all about this sort of celebrity status or having these amazing opportunities. There's a hard road to navigate before you get there. And not everybody does get there, and that's the rough reality of it. But sometimes people say to me when I'm prepping for a show or doing something, and they'll see me, covered in buckets and dirty hands and they'll say, "Oh, do you still do all that yourself?" And I look at them, gone out, and say, "Well, who's going to do it for me?"
Yeah, but also you wouldn't want to.
I want to do it myself. So that's what makes me me.
Yeah,
and the more you handle stuff and the more you touch stuff, the more you understand it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and I really do believe this, to be a good florist, I do think you need to have an understanding of a garden.
Yeah.
And my route is a garden first, because I've always grown. And then, to me, I maximise that pleasure by what I grow, I bring indoors.
Yeah.
And I celebrate that. And it's a symbiotic relationship between those two, and I can't divorce those two things.
Yeah.
And when I see people or meet people who are florists, and they'll say, "Oh, I have artificial grass, and I don't do gardening." I'm like, well, how can you do floristry then?
Yeah.
Because to me, the two just go hand in hand. It's interlinked.
You need to grow and then show. Yeah.
You've got to walk it up. So what is your garden like? Tell us about your garden.
What is my garden like? My garden is, I grow on just over 1/3 of an acre.
Yeah.
It's a working garden.
Obviously.
It's not a pretty garden that is sort of manicured and neat. There's dandelions, there's nettles growing there because I never get on top of weeding. I don't get too perplexed about it. But I only grow things that I can use, really, because it has to be a shrub or a flower or a plant that I can do something with. I never have enough time in the garden. My garden is a challenge and sometimes a slight worry because I spend weeks now away from home. Although I sort of drip back into home, but I'm getting ready for my next event. So the sort of 2 lockdown summers were almost like an epiphany for me because it was a chance to achieve jobs back in your garden and do things. And it was that first time, actually, for many, many years that I thought, I'm on top of this.
Yeah.
I've controlled it. I've done it. Because normally I'm on catch-up. And I see all those plants waiting to be planted and those seeds waiting to be pricked out. And I think, when is that going to get done?
Yeah, and it's been really lovely, actually, because on your social media over the past 2 years, you have been bringing your plants in from the garden and celebrating them.
Yes,
celebrating the joy of a bud vase with one flower in it, or a handful of what we sometimes ignore garden flowers,
Definitely.
don't we? We perceive that floristry is these perfect long-stemmed things that have been shipped in from the Netherlands for the most part.
Yes.
And actually, you've got some silver birch over there, some beautiful bits.
I will just do something.
Yeah,
because I've carried these all the way down. So I'm going to do something
I
with
left
them.
my violin behind, but do you? But that's the joy, is the touching and the handling,
it's that touching
isn't
and
it?
handling.
And as Faith we'll say, it releases endorphins. It makes you feel better about yourself.
It does,
Actually handling plants.
Mindful.
It
This
is
a
mindful.
activity.
It
very
really
mindful.
is. Same as I think it's now something my lovely colleagues here will sort of agree with. You know, it's now become a much sort of. Can I cut on this floor or not? Will you hate me?
Go for it.
Oh, don't worry. It's Nick's rug. I don't mind.
Oh,
what
it's all
happens
right.
to
Yeah,
it.
I'll tread it in.
Everything
then if
else
it's
is from
Nick's
our houses, but it's Nick's rug.
Yeah, I think mindfulness, you know, it's that funny word that gets thrown about all over the
Yeah.
place, isn't it? And a lot of people sort of, it's slightly, mindfulness, a bit airy-fairy, what's it about? But to be honest, when I'm picking things and doing things, I'm in my own little world. And I can be doing a demonstration to, an audience of a couple of thousand people, but although I know you're here and I'm chatting to you all like my mates, really. And I'm just doing my flowers, and my flowers are just calming. I'm
body language
absorbed
has
in what I'm
changed.
doing.
Your
And
body language has
I'm
changed
relaxed.
as soon as you started handling the
You know,
flowers.
as soon as I
yeah.
get a cutting
Snip.
implement in my hand,
Basically, as soon as he's armed, he's absolutely.
I'm happy. Have scissors will travel.
I'm from near Doncaster, so you're speaking my language. As soon as I'm fully armed, I'm perfectly safe.
You know what, I'll tell you a really funny thing about... I drive a transit van because I'm always ugging and tugging and sort of carting stuff about. And then we've got a runabout car which we call the dog car because it's a right old dump of a place where the dog gets ferried about in. And then my partner's got a posh Range Rover. But in every car there's some of these.
Always.
Because you never know what you might need to snip. So
Acquire.
every glove compartment's got some of these in. And then sometimes, I'll nip out in the Range Rover and sort of occasionally take the dog out, or I've called to visit friends and I've spotted something. And this gorgeous, cream interior then just gets covered in, pussy willow catkins and all. And I have no respect for a car. I'm a heathen. Any guys who are really into the cars, you'd hate me in your life, because to me it's just a workhorse where you pile things in the back.
Yeah, we're
so
the
there's
same.
always pollen stains and little insects crawling about.
And obviously, everything that you collect is very legally foraged with permission from the landowners.
Absolutely, always.
We just need to make sure that you. I many years ago did a plant ident at a college I was teaching at, and I couldn't get hold of a piece of monkey puzzle tree. And I drove past one on my way home one night,
Yeah.
and I knocked on the door and nobody answered. So I took that as permission to take a branch from very low down, and I feel guilty 10 years on, to be honest.
Oh.
But
Sarah.
It's very
Obviously,
useful.
people from Doncaster have got far more conscience than people from Sheffield.
Shocked
Swiftly
my car.
moving on. Well, some of this is very nicely foraged with permission from the Great Yorkshire Showground yesterday. And I had a lovely mindfulness moment just wandering about while everybody was sort of doing the builds and the gardens and getting on with it. And there's this wood along the back here, which has been a regular foraging place for many years now. And I went back in that wood, there's robins and there's wrens and there's the blackbirds singing, there's rabbits running about. And I'm just as happy as Larry, just picking a few branches, cutting a few snippets. And to me, that's just heavenly.
Yeah, it's
it doesn't
perfect.
have to be an exotic thing to make an arrangement. It can just be anything.
So what have you got in there? You've got some.
So we've got some wild cherry.
Wild cherry,
This
yeah.
gorgeous wild cherry here. There's a bit of birch, just this
Yeah.
gorgeous, viridant lime green on the birch, just breaking into bud there. A little bit of saracocca, some heather just going in at the moment. So it's just anything really. You could do anything with this. And the nice thing about something like these bottles here, this group of bottles, it's a sustainable thing because I can use this over and over again.
Yeah.
And, I can empty these out, I can wash these out, I can change it. So this could have hosta leaves in a few weeks' time. In autumn, it could just be a mass of dahlias. It could have sweet peas in, it can be anything. It's multifunctional. And what I like about something like this is it looks good on a windowsill.
Yeah.
Because I like the fact that people walk past my cottage where I live. I live on a lane and, people walk past. And I can put something in a windowsill. And I think I'm enjoying it, they're enjoying it as well. Now, they might not be. They might not ever look at my window. But I think it might just cheer somebody's day up, that. And they might think, oh, look at those flowers. That's
Yeah.
an uplift. It's a spirit boost,
And the
isn't
sunlight
it?
coming through as well. You get the colours reflecting
And the reflection
into your room
on the
as well.
glass, yeah, which is so nice.
Yeah. And you don't need a lot of flowers because they're relatively small jam jars, aren't they?
Yeah,
in
same as
effect?
I would say, just always start with something like a bit of foliage first because
Yeah.
it gives it a bit of volume, it gives it
Yeah.
a bit of support lower down. And something I always say when I'm doing a flower arrangement is people often say, Jonathan, you always put that green stuff in first. Why'd you do that? And I always say, well, that green stuff, it's like that bit on our person that you don't see, which is your underwear. And it holds everything in place. So, foliage is like the underwear of the flower world. You heard that today at Harrogate.
It's important in the garden, though, isn't it? Foliage.
Definitely.
And the colour green lifts every other colour in a garden, doesn't
You
it?
imagine
So
a
it's
garden
exactly the
without
same.
greenery. What's
Exactly.
it about? It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, you're back to that sort of bedding style, aren't you? Where it's
Yeah.
just flower on flower on flower.
Yeah.
And
Pub
it's
garden.
a riot of colours, but it kills the eye.
Absolutely.
Whereas greenery is a pause, it's a rest, it's soothing.
Yeah.
It's meditative, isn't
It's
it,
a
in
very
itself?
calming, healing colour.
Really
It's
is.
green. Really
Absolutely
yeah.
is.
Oh, you've got hellebores coming in. My hellebores have been
Charming.
magnificent this year.
Haven't they been radiant?
And the blossom this year as well. Spring blossom, the cherries. If you do get into Harrogate, the cherry tree walker on the Stray is magnificent
It's glorious.
this year.
You know, we're so boring as gardeners and florists and horticulturalists.
Speak for yourself.
Because
Not in
we
those
also-
shoes.
no, but we say the same thing.
Yeah.
Anybody in my 11 o'clock demonstration this morning, Julie, I know you were there. And if you were, what was I talking about? The cherry trees on
Yeah.
the Stray.
Yeah.
You see, we're so boring
Yeah,
because
but-
we see
Yeah.
these same things and we think, blow me, look at that, I love it. You know, it's
But that means
stunning.
you've survived another year. Do you know what I mean? And
It
it's
does.
part of that season.
As you get older, Dolly, that's
Tell me
an
about
achievement
it.
in
Tell me
itself.
about it. Well, someone said to me the other day, "What's your favourite plant?" And I said, "It depends what day it is."
Yeah.
Because actually, at the start of the year, snowdrops any day, but that's because
Definitely.
they've come through, and I think I've made it through another winter. And then each day, at the moment, I've got some peonies, Molly the Witch, the yellow one, opening up.
Fantastic.
That'll be open in 2 days' time, so that'll be my favourite in 2 days' time. But right now, it could be tulips because they've got so much to offer. There's all variety,
Yes.
and seeing that cycle is just part of nature. It's getting us in tune with it, and gardeners are
Yeah.
And
hopefully better
optimism.
balance. Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
as gardeners, we're very optimistic people because we're always looking for what's coming forward.
Yeah.
And it's that almost primeval knowledge that even in the depths of winter time, there's something that succeeds.
Yeah.
So, you wait for that first hazel catkin to break out, that first winter aconite to reveal itself. And that is like an uplift. It's like a tonic, isn't it? It's,
Yeah, yeah.
Symbol of
it's
hope.
nature saying, look, we're getting through these endurance. How many people during sort of the lockdown
Yeah.
found the pleasure and the
Yeah.
amazing medical health benefits from gardening, from
Well, they're all
horticulture?
here today, aren't they?
They're
It's
all here today,
fabulous,
and we've
yeah.
got a new breed of gardeners that we're celebrating because they found that during that time. And during challenging times in people's lives, they do find solace in nature. Nature's calming. By nature, just that word, by nature. We want to be amongst nature.
We do.
It's what we do.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
natural thing as well. It's the first thing people did when we were locked down was go outside into the gardens.
Definitely.
And it's such an instinct, isn't it?
It's a real instinct, and I think what is so lovely as well, flowers play a huge part in our lives. And I know this, I can see through faces, there's a lot of floral people here today, and I'm guessing because you're at a flower show on the first day, you're passionate horticulturalists and you love your plants and your flowers. But actually, we shouldn't underestimate that importance of them in our lives. You drive past somewhere and it's planted, a roundabout. I'm sometimes so boring, I'll go around it twice. But that's not because I've missed my turn off, by the way. But it lifts you, doesn't it? It cheers you up. Just a shop front where they've got something planted outside it, be it a clipped bay, a piece of topiary.
Yeah.
It's nice,
Yeah,
it's
it
soothing.
does.
It greens up our
It
communities.
does, absolutely, absolutely. And you are fully stacked this weekend, aren't you? You are on all the stages every day.
They get the money's worth out of me, I have to say, here at Harrogate
Well,
Flower
they,
Show.
they pay you.
Hey, what's that? Pay me in flowers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a power-packed 4 days. I actually came here on Monday because I started
Yes.
dressing the crate stage on Monday. And as I always explain to people, with the job what I do is it can only be done last minute.
Yeah.
So you're always working
It's
to
very
quite
fresh,
tight
yeah.
deadlines and very fresh. And of course, we've been challenged by the Easter bank holiday, which has sort of been a bit of a sort of... what shall we say? It's been a nuisance, if we're absolutely
Yeah.
honest, because it sort of
Yeah.
fell into delivery times and getting things there. So it has made it almost slightly more awkward. But yeah, I'm on the crate stage twice a day each day, and down here on the grow stage as well. So
Fantastic.
I'm just going to
Oh,
do
look
a
at
little
this.
reveal there.
There we go.
So
Look at that.
you can just see, I'm not purporting to say there's masses of skill in arranging something like that. And just over on Crate where I've got my trade stand there, we're trying to sort of say to people, just do something simple, strip it back a little bit. If you're really into flowers, you want to learn more, then keep learning more. But equally, if you don't want to learn more, just have things that enable you to just pick a few things from the garden, bring
Yeah.
it indoors, give it as a gift, share it, spread that floral love. But I can see that each and every one of you, if you were sat looking at that, far more interesting than watching your television, isn't it? There's nothing on there.
Absolutely.
But it's soothing, it's calming, it's restful. And I just think it's about now, isn't it? It's about springtime coming up, that abundance of colour and the breaking through of all those gorgeous greens.
Jonathan, that's been amazing. I can't believe you've created that as you've chatted to us. Everybody, thank you so much. Jonathan Mosley, our celebrity florist.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, girls. Thank you.
Thank you, my darling.
Thank you.
Well, thank you once again. Welcome once again to the Human Gardener stage. I can see some people are in for the long haul, which is great because the flower show is beautiful, but it's a long walk, isn't it, in the day? And you need to really regulate your spending. So, welcome to the Harrogate Flower Show and the Human Gardener stage. I am Sarah Owen Hughes, and I'm a professional horticulturist or professional plant botherer, which I've been called in the past, which I don't mind. If that was animals or children, that would have a whole different slant. But plants, I don't mind bothering them, and I'm passionate about them. And along with Faith Douglas, we're here all weekend, every day, and we have curated this stage to have the most interesting people from the breadth and depth and the far reaches of horticulture, people that we want to talk to, that we think are exciting and interesting, and that we hope you will find exciting and interesting too. So something that will spark an inspiration, a passion, something you might not have even considered before. There's a bit of a draft, so it is a little bit cool around here, but hopefully it'll give you a little bit of a rest and a break and a chance to then go off and explore the rest of the show. I'm really excited about our latest guest on the stage, and she's a little bit nervous, so be gentle with her. I mean, you've all had your lunch, that's fine, no one's going to bite. So Layla is an amazing, I'm going to say she's a willow weaver, but she's actually a willow artist. And I've met Layla at the Yorkshire Show and at Countryside Live and at all these events, and with her company Dragon Willow, she creates the most incredible concoctions, the most beautiful pieces of installation work. And she started properly willow weaving in about 2000. And it was because of medieval reenactment, wasn't it, that you started that? So we're going to find out a bit more about that, and hopefully she'll get you all inspired to start working with willow in your gardens as well. So a very, very warm Harrogate welcome to Layla Viner of Dragon Willow, our willow weaver.
So Layla, welcome. Can you first of all start by telling us your path into willow weaving? How did you come across willow weaving? And medieval, what is that about? I need to know more about that, please.
I didn't know anything about willow weaving. I didn't know it existed. I certainly didn't know it was a career option. That was a mistake, really. But I started off, I had a bit of an accident. I had a long period of recovery, so I was looking for something that I could do that wasn't very walking aroundy. And I tried lots of things, and then I had one friend who kept saying, I do medieval reenactment, you should come and have a go. And I kept putting him off for ages. I was like, yeah, I think I'm washing my hair, or, I've got to do my shoelaces. Anyway, I went along one day, and it was absolutely brilliant. And that's what got me into basketry to start with, because there was a guy there selling baskets, and I asked, because they're really weird ones there. There were fish traps, there were skeps, there were some really sort of intricate things that are really traditional and just useful. So I asked him about them, and he said, oh, well, I don't really know how you make them. I just buy them and sell them at the reenactments. I was like, So I went home and I said to my boyfriend, who's now my husband, I said, I quite fancy having a go at willow weaving. So he bought me a book called Willow Weave by Mary Butcher. And that sort of starts you off with round basket, oval and square basketry. And all my friends raided all the local willow trees and brought it to my back door, and that's how I started willow weaving, really. And then when I got back into full-time employment, I kind of dropped it a bit, and then I picked it up again. So with the reenactment, I started selling skeps and fish traps, traditional basketry, like the round shopping basket, the ovals, big log baskets. Lots of mead flowed. It was very fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And then people started asking me if I could do workshops. Yeah. So I did. I started doing workshops, and then it got to a point where I could either go sort of full-time willow weaving or stay full employed. So at that time in my life, I was like, kind of like the paycheck. So I dropped down on the willow, and I started again with my job. And probably about 10 years ago, I got to a point where I thought, actually, I'd like to give it a go as a full-time job. So I quit my job, and I started Dragon Willow again.
Fantastic. And so because I think I read that you didn't make a single basket for the first year that you were willow weaving. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it was all fish traps, skeps, everything except for basketry.
So what is a fish trap? What
A
is that?
fish trap
Yeah.
is willow weaved in a method that traps fishes.
Okay.
Shocking, I know. But there's different types you can get. So they were banned in York and a lot of places in the country, the big river traps, because they were so big that the boats couldn't get down the rivers.
Wow.
So we make smaller versions now that are more, you can still use them, but they're more decorative and sort of reenactory type things. But I do make a lot of eel traps. So that's the York eel trap is this kind of shape, and the bulbous bit here has a hole that the eel swims at, and there's a lid here you open, and it captures loads of eels. And I still make those, and people still use those. I don't make so many fish traps nowadays, though.
Wow.
So what kind of willow, what willow species do you use? What's the best kind of willow to use? Because I would imagine, does it need to be quite bendy?
Yeah, it needs to be bendy. What I tell people is you can use any willow, because a lot of people grow willow in their garden or they've got willow in their garden. So you can use anything that'll bend and not crack. Traditionally in the UK, we've used a variety called Black Maul, that's M-A-U-L. And this is an example of Black Maul and an example of what you can do with willow in your garden. Maybe slightly larger though, you might want.
Depends what if you're growing sweet peas, you'd need
Yeah.
a lot more than that, but that's still really beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we use a lot of black maul, but I use a lot of the purpurea and different types of willow.
Yeah.
I've got various coppices. Well, I've got 3 coppices.
So you grow your own willow as well, do you?
I do, yeah. So when we plant it, I thought you might want to see it, I don't know. Anyway.
yeah.
When you plant it, it's roughly a 12-inch stick, and the root, there's little bubbles which you can have a look at later on, and that's where they're called rhizomes, and that's where the roots come out of. So this is Salix alba. It's a golden willow, and when it grows, when you harvest it at January time, it's a really vivid, really beautiful golden colour, lovely. And that's a purpurea, so it grows really strongly with quite wide stems. So unless you cut it down in sort of June time, you wouldn't technically use it as a basketry willow because it'd be really thick. Good for hurdles, though. This is a variety called, I just have to remember, Dicky Meadows. I also call it zebra willow because if you have a look at it, it's got like stripes, green and brown kind of stripes, but it's Dicky Meadows, and this is a much finer rod, so it grows really tall and really thin and really straight, and that's perfect for willow weaving. But any of the Dick's varieties, you spell it how you say it, they're really good for willow weaving, and I grow a lot of them.
Great
And
stuff.
so when you say sorry
all
Faith,
right.
when you say coppicing, can you explain briefly what coppicing is? Because we all know of coppice. Everyone, you'll know a street called something coppice, won't you? But what exactly is coppicing?
So a coppice, so when I plant this, it'll go that far into the ground, all this will be planted, roots will come out, and this will be what grows in the first year. I'll coppice it, I'll plant it, I've planted it, apart from this. I plant it round about February, March time, because I don't want it to rot off before it gets a chance to start growing, which we do get quite a lot of rainfall in January. So in the year, it'll grow, and then you cut it down every year. So I've got a 1 year and a 2 year crop rotation. So for the 1 year, I'll cut it, and the 2 year, I'll cut it down to about this height again, and everything up here, I'll grade it into like 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot lengths. And then about this time of year, it starts growing, and every year you do it, this will be imagine it, that's what you see on the ground. This is called a stool, and it gets wider and wider and wider with age. So here, this is what you'll see, the round bit, and you can see it's the first year of this growing like this, so it's just got a few shoots. As it gets older, this bit here, it gets wider and wider, so you get more and more shoots coming off it and more willow coming out.
I mean, coppeting is a real heritage craft, isn't it, in itself, isn't it? It's something that we used to do to manage our woodlands, not just with willow, but hazel. Do you ever work with hazel,
I've got hazel,
or anything like
I've
that?
got dogwood, then we've got ash.
Yeah, oh,
Wow.
coppice ash as well. Wow, that's
What do you use the
impressive.
ash for?
Split ash basketry.
Oh, wow, okay. And so what else have you brought? Because I can see some really beautiful things that, if you forgot about them, they'd look like they belonged on the stage, which is basically Faith and my living rooms. We just raided everything. Our houses have never been so tidy. Can you talk us through what you've got there and what materials? Because the basket there's got at least 3 different types of woven material in there, hasn't it?
Yeah. So this is a fitched basket, and I'll just take everything out of it.
No,
The
you don't
nice
have
thing
to.
about basketry is
You can put things in them.
you
That's
can
what
put
they're
things
there
in
for.
them. And I do. I am the worst person for overloading baskets. So this is a square fitched basket. It's continental style. And again, remember that black maul I said we traditionally use in the UK? This is it with its bark on. This buff colour, which you'll see a lot of basketry in, is black maul when it's been cut, dried, boiled and stripped. And the boiling process releases the tanning, which gives you this buff colour. If you cut black maul willow it's about this time of year actually, and strip it straight away, you get this white willow. Well, this was an old basket actually, so it's not so white anymore. It's the colour of bone. It's a really beautiful white colour when it's fresh. And I bought these baskets because just to show you that you don't need to just have round baskets or oval baskets. You can make anything, any sort of shape of basket. This, you can fill these later if you want, perfectly balanced, and it carries bottles of water really well in there, and a lovely packed lunch in there.
So how long does it take to make something like that?
That probably take me 2.5 hours.
Okay, what about this? How long would that take? That looks a little bit more complicated.
It probably takes about 20 minutes.
Okay. What about this?
Well, I don't know if we've got time to make one of them. But if you want to have a go.
I think we should.
So this is, if you have a look at the star, it's got bends in it, the bit of willow, and these bends are at this length. Handy that, isn't it? There you go.
It's almost as if you've done this before.
I know. Oh, maybe it was planned.
Maybe it was planned.
Maybe it was planned. Would you both like to have a go?
Why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you will have to share a stick because stupidly I only brought one.
Oh, that's fine.
There you go. You put that wherever you want. Put it there. So, what you're going to do, so about that far down from the tip,
Yeah.
you want to bend the willow over your stick. I might not have got the right stick. I have got the right stick. So you need 5 bends in total. Have you got your stick?
Okay, it's here.
Yeah. So,
I'm freestyling.
One bend.
that's okay. 1 bend.
I've got
2
1, 2, 3,
bends.
4,
Oh, I've snapped it.
5. I've got 5.
Excellent.
Right. That doesn't look like a star.
1, 2.
I'm sure.
I'm getting school anxiety, craft sessions at school. Like Blue Peter, you think it doesn't look anything like it did on the teacher's table, right? No, I know. Go big or go home. I've decided to freestyle.
So once you got this, the one that's the lowest down on the rod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to bend it like that,
Yeah.
Okay.
and you're going to cross it over. So it's kind of like that. So your next bend it kind of goes there around your next bend,
Yeah.
halfway there. Okay. Now you're going to poke it through. So
I've lost my bend.
if you put this
I've
rod
lost my
on
plot.
top,
Right, yes.
Going round the bend.
that's it.
Oh, yes.
So
Is that
if
about right?
you,
think
yeah,
I've got
I
it
think you're missing a bend there.
Am I?
Maybe. You'll find out anyway. So then you're going to come through like this and just let it slide a bit because you don't want to bend it, and bring it out like that. That's
Right.
it.
Oh,
There,
okay.
there,
Yep.
there,
Okay.
there.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I can see a
then-
star now.
What?
Through again
Yeah.
and bring it out again.
Yeah.
I'm lost. Help. What's happened to mine?
Mine's not twinkling very brightly, I have to say. There we go.
Yours is great.
No,
Look at mine. When's a
Faith.
triangle?
Right.
I think we should stick to gardening, shouldn't we, you and me? Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
absolutely.
That's really
State of
good.
that.
I
Yeah.
think.
There you go. I'll
Let's
pass it
just
on.
check.
There's an
I
expert.
think it
There's
might
a reason
be
I'm not an expert
1,
at
2,
this.
3, 4. Yeah, you're a bend off.
You bend
All
off.
right, I can't count. We've established that.
We all have those issues.
There we
right.
go, there we
so
go,
that's
right.
going to bend
Yeah,
through
yeah.
there.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh my word. I knew we
So
said
just
this would be
let it
interactive and fun,
slide
but I'm getting the interactive
And
bit.
then through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you have it.
Yeah.
And then you just organise it. And when you've got back to here,
Yes.
all you do is you do like a figure of 8 in and out of here. So poke it in, bring it round, poke it in.
Mine does not look
Bring
like a
it
star.
round.
What is that? It's a Christmas tree. I've
It's a
made a Christmas tree.
There you
See if
go.
you take that.
What's happened to that bit?
That's your wand bit. It is very
It's nearly
interesting, I've got
there.
to say. 10 out of 10 for creativity.
There you go. Create.
But 0 out of 10 for accuracy from the pair of us.
Yours is
Oh
a
my
star.
goodness. Well,
Yours is
yeah.
clearly a star.
From a distance, it might shine, but not very brightly. This
There
is
we go.
strangely
There we
addictive,
go.
though, I have to
There
say.
we
So,
go,
Layla,
look.
if
There's
people
mine.
want to find out more about willow weaving
Yeah.
and going to courses, going on lessons, where do they go?
Well, you can always go to my website, which is dragonwillow.co.uk, shameless advertising. I do online workshops and I do in-person workshops, and I do workshops at different venues. You can have a look at the Basket Makers Association if you're not from this area, and you can find a willow weaver in your area, because we're kind of all around but spread out quite a lot. So yeah, you can do any of that to find out more. There's millions of books on the market as well. One I would actually recommend is one from a lady called Jenny Crisp. I can't remember what it's called, but she's only written one book, and it's a lovely book. And it starts off with really simple projects going on to more advanced projects, and it's a nice book to have a look at. Also, if you ever want to make a willow fish, you can have a go at making a willow fish from my online workshop. It's a free workshop, so you can and if you've got a willow tree in your garden, you can just grab a bit of willow off it without, maiming it too much, and have a go at that.
Amazing. Layla, that's been so interesting. It's flown by. Thank you so much. And
Thank
a
you
very,
very
very big
much.
thank you, everyone, for Layla Viner from Dragon Willow.
Thanks, Layla.
Thank you.
Well done.
Oh, my goodness. What a superstar. Hello? No?
Testing, testing.
No, we're on. You're on.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. And I have realised how northern I am. Now I'm saying that out loud. Good afternoon. Welcome to our final Human Gardener slot of Thursday. We're on Thursday at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. My name's Sarah Owen Hughes, and I've been here on the stage all day interviewing amazing people from the breadth and depth of horticulture, along with Faith Douglas, who is a curator at a local arboretum. And we have just picked out some of the most interesting people we can think of. So when you're sat with your emergency coffee and biscuits for that 15 minutes where you just want to not shop before you go back and shop a bit more, we've curated a stage full of wonder and delight. We've had an absolute ball today. We've met some amazing people, some really interesting people. And our final guest is equally at home with everybody else from that category. Alistair is a garden designer, landscape architect and inspirer, a plantsman as well, and based in this area, and he's just about to set into a new venture which is creating a garden design school to get more people into the industry creating. So he is now going to hopefully talk a little bit about show gardens as well, because he's been involved in some amazing show gardens here, which you might remember from previous years. So a big warm Harrogate welcome, if you haven't got your coffee in your hands, for Alistair Baldwin of Alistair Baldwin Associates, our show gardener and landscape architect.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we can hear. So, obviously, Alistair, tell me a little bit about your pathway, because it's been circuitous, as most of our pathways have been in horticulture.
It has been circuitous. Yeah, I think the best pathways aren't linear. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you discover interesting things on the way. So yeah, it started out with studying landscape architecture at what was then called Leeds Polytechnic. Yes. And then changed its name to a university, much to my disappointment. But I studied landscape architecture there, and for 3 years, and then travelled for 2. And then came back and studied landscape architecture there again, postgraduate. But, landscape architecture is such a massive subject. The tutors at the time used to start our sessions by going to the door and opening it and saying, see everything out there? That's your job.
Yeah.
From this door out is landscape architecture. From this door in is architecture. So it's everything. Down into the earth and up into the sky. The weather, the soil, geology, everything up and down. And then everything horizontally, you just have to know it all. It's a huge subject. And I didn't really feel like after 4 years of mostly studying, lots of not studying.
Lots of enjoying your studying, yes.
Lots of studenty stuff. Back then in the 80s when it was all about sort of Tetleys and rugby league,
Can you all hear Alistair, by the way? Do you want me to move his mic a little bit? Can you move your mic a bit closer, Alistair?
I'm just switching that off because that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
It's the quietest I've ever known you.
So I felt like I didn't really know much about it, even after 4 years. So I started teaching landscape architecture, and I wrote a very precocious letter to the head of the department saying, I finished after 4 years and I still feel like I don't really know enough, especially about drawing and so on. And this was pre, I'm going to show how old I am here, this was pre using computers to design stuff.
Yeah.
I still don't use computers to design stuff. I employ people to use computers to design stuff because they break when I go near them. But at the time, I could draw what I thought was quite well. So they said, yeah, come in and you can mill around in the studio and help design students learn to draw. And I ended up being there for 13 years and got a real bug for teaching. At the same time, I was designing gardens myself. So I'd always been interested in the sort of horticulture and craftsmanship of making gardens rather than the broad-scale landscape architecture side of things. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then my career kind of wiggled its way to here, where I sort of grew the practice, and I've now got a team of 5 who all work from home across the north of England.
Yeah.
And I've never kind of stopped missing the teaching.
Yeah.
You know all about that.
I'm a recovering teacher. I gave up 2 years ago, and
Still
any
in-
opportunity to come here and talk
still
at
on-
people has been leapt upon.
So that's the route it's taken, really.
Yeah.
And now I've decided to set the school up.
So there is a big difference between landscape architecture and garden design, and there's a chasm between them. I actually gave a lecture a few weeks ago to one of the landscape architecture courses in Leeds, and it was final year students, and they couldn't name 10 plants between them because they said, we've just done the hard landscaping. And their tutor said, well, it's okay, you'll pick it up when you're in practice, just join a big practice. And they were coming up to me saying, we wish we'd done this in year one.
Yeah.
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 But there's only so much you can do in a teaching day. So how would you describe the differences between landscape architecture and garden design?
Landscape architects are rubbish at planting.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're not plants people.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Landscape architecture is as I was saying, it's such a massive subject that even in 4 years you can't skim the surface. But not knowing about your plants as a landscape architect is like being an artist and saying, I don't know about the colour blue. You know, it's such a fundamental thing. And colleges and universities aren't pushing it enough.
And it is the thing that the customer wants to know. The customer doesn't necessarily want to know about the drainage.
No,
you think about the
don't.
drainage. They want to know about the pretty fluffy things at the front
They
of
want
the
to know
border.
about the pretty fluffy things,
Yeah.
exactly right. And quite often the customers know quite a bit about the pretty fluffy things themselves, you know,
Yeah.
and they want you to help them learn more.
Yeah.
But it's what separates us as garden designers from architects. You know, a lot of our projects involve working with architects and developers and interior designers. The bit that none of them know about is plants and Latin.
Yeah.
You know.
They're really
So-
frightened of plants and Latin.
Well, when you start spouting Latin, then they all
Yeah.
sort of get nervous and look at their shoes, you know. And it's the thing that separates us as
Yeah.
horticulturists out from every other profession. So it's something that we really do need to be good at
Yeah.
and interested in, you know.
So what's involved in a really good garden design?
What's involved in
Yeah.
one?
Start at the beginning.
Knowing your client,
Yeah.
getting to know them as human beings, you
Yeah.
know. And what some garden designers, mostly in London, forget is that it's not your garden.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's your client's garden.
Yeah.
You know, it's their house. You know, you know, it's where they go about their daily lives. It's where when they come downstairs in their pajamas and they look out the window, that's what they look at.
Yeah.
You know, it's where their children play, their grandchildren play. It's where they have birthday parties. It's a part of their fabric. You know, so you go in temporarily and you create something that you leave for them that they then play their lives out in.
Yeah.
So you've got to get to know them. You've got to get to know what their children like and you know the characters of their children and you know what's their dog like and how much time do they have, what are their jobs, when do they go on holiday. You know, you have to know how they tick as a family unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what they want to use the garden for,
What
I
they want to use
imagine,
the garden
because
for,
a lot of
yeah.
people's garden is an extension of their home, isn't it? It's almost like a green room.
So true, yeah. It's
Yeah.
an extension of the home and an extension of them.
Yeah.
You know, so we get commissioned to design gardens because people like the gardens that we make,
Yeah.
which is sometimes a bit awkward because they sort of wave their hand out at the garden and say, we want you to do that thing that you did at that other garden that we like. Can you do that here? And you then chat to them and you think, yeah, what I did at that last garden, I don't think that's quite right for you.
Yeah.
But they really want it, you know.
Yeah.
Because they might have, you know, 4 really active kids under the age of 10.
Yeah.
And you go, well, yeah, the people I did that garden for, they had no kids.
Yeah.
And so that's why it looks like that.
Yeah.
So yours maybe needs to be a little bit more, you know,
Robust.
tailored. Yeah, robust. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a really important thing when you start out is getting to know them and then getting to know the site and getting to know the site in every sense, and that we spend time in the morning and the middle of the day and in the evening.
Yeah, so
in
that would
gardens
be
that we're
looking at
designing.
light levels, weather,
Light levels.
aspect, everything like that, wouldn't
Absolutely. And also those kind of boring things like, you know, where does the water sit after it's rained?
Yeah.
And which areas are compacted. You know, sometimes there's things that you can't see, but you can work out through a bit of detective work
it? Yeah.
that, you know, rabbits are coming through the garden at night, or, you know, the rain doesn't fall on certain parts of the garden, or neighbours' trees are doing something in the garden, you know. So you have to do quite a bit of detective work at the beginning to understand how this piece of land operates, because you're making this intervention onto it. And if you don't get that right, the land fights back.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
fights back.
Well, you want it to be sustainable, don't you? So you want to plant up a garden, create a garden that lasts, so you walk 10 years down the line, that it's still there, the plants are still growing, it's thriving, isn't it?
Exactly right. Yeah. And if you design a garden here in Harrogate, it's one kind of soil,
Yeah.
Very heavy clay.
heavy
Yeah.
clay, really thick heavy clay in places, but also there's the seams of running sand
Yes.
through Harrogate, which pop up in some gardens. And one neighbour in Harrogate can have a particular type of soil, and next door have got a different one. Really different to if you go only up the road to Ripon.
Yeah.
Ripon sits mostly on gravel.
Yeah.
So it's really, really free draining. Go up to where I am in Richmond, and there's bedrock not that far down.
Really?
So you need to look at the maps and understand the kind of bigger picture,
Yeah.
really. Which some clients are very quick to tell you, it's free draining soil here, and you go down a foot, and you can make pots out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then is it to the drawing board and you sit down and draw your pretty pictures?
She's so rude.
Yeah, that's about it.
I'm not
then
a
we're
drawer
finished.
either.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time kind of exploring how the garden's going to look and feel.
Yeah.
Because again, as designers, we don't impose an aesthetic on a garden. We draw the aesthetic out of the place, and we do that with the clients. Because invariably, we get told quite a bit. No orange, no colour orange anywhere. No yellow in the planting. We get that. We get that quite a lot. No maintenance, zero maintenance. I don't know anything. So you have to kind of explore with them what they mean quite often. So we talk a lot about colour. We talk a lot about the style of the garden, how it feels, how the light hits it, where they're going to want to sort of sit, what they do in each room of the ground floor of the house. So, when they come out of doors, what's that room? Is it the utility room? In which case you're stepping out that door for one reason, whereas if it's the kitchen, you're stepping out that door for a completely different reason, to go outside and eat. So we start a lot with pictures.
Yeah.
And we work with photographs and pictures, and we just lay them all out on the table. And very quickly they'll go, I love that. I'm not sure about that. I don't like that. The husband will go, I like that. The wife goes, well, I don't like that. Husbands always point at really stripy lawns.
Yeah.
Really neat lawn up and down with a mower like that. They go, well, that's what I want. And the wives, point at all sorts of different things. So sometimes you get this incredible kind of team, this unit you see in the client, where they're both immaculately neat people, and they go, this is how we want the garden to be ordered. And then other times you get them having a kind of two-way conversation in front of you, which is in itself is interesting.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time doing that, and then we start in 3D.
Yeah.
So we build a 3D model of the house, and then we build a 3D model of all the land.
Yeah.
I say we. We've got people who do that. And then you can see it. You can look at it. So you can effectively hold the site like that in your hand, and you can do that with it, which is great. So you see it as a thing.
Yeah.
Which is very different to seeing it as something that you're in and you're looking out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see those trees there, which are not in the garden.
Yeah.
So you start to understand what's in the distance, a viaduct or the neighbour's trees or that petrol station or the spire of that church, which aren't on your plan when you're at the drawing board.
Yeah.
They're a mile away or something like that. So we start with 3D, and then we start sketching in 3D, because a lot of gardens are sticky uppy.
Yeah.
They're not just flatty.
Yeah.
So when you enjoy getting technical. When you draw a plan, everything's flat, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know? So, but one of the most interesting things I was ever told about what we do as garden designers and landscape architects is that you design the spaces in between things,
Yes. Yeah.
which is so cool, isn't it? It really makes you think.
And also, I think quite often you'll find that your clients see their garden, they can't see where it's going, but also they definitely can't see a flat plan. A 2D plan
No.
is really incomprehensible for a lot of people. So actually seeing things in 3D becomes much more tangible.
Really important.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
important. anything like a hedge or a tree or a shrub or a step or a level change, if you can pull it up into the air and show them what it looks like, they get a feel for the size of things.
Yeah.
And we always put people in our models, which
so
helps
important, yeah.
because they can see the proportion of things.
Scale.
Exactly. We'll put a car in the drive, and suddenly they go, "Oh, I can see how big
Yeah.
the patio is because look, there's a table and chairs on it."
Yeah.
So we start there and show them the model. And the good thing about modelling like that is that they're very, very easy with these softwares now. They're very easy to adapt. So if they want a hedge lower or a wall moving, you pick it up and move it.
Yeah.
In front of them on the model. Oh, what, like this? You can push the top of the hedge down, or make a window or an arch in it or something. So it's very, in those early days before we get remotely technical, we don't talk about types of paving or lighting or anything. We don't, or even plant species. We just and if they start doing it, we say no, we'll do that later.
Yeah.
We need to talk about where are you going to eat,
How's
where
that
are the
space going
bins,
to be used?
how's it going to feel? Is it a warm space? Is it a sheltered space? Is it a big space? Is it a colourful space? So we use those kind of quite broad words, and it gets them talking because they're words that they understand and are familiar with.
Yeah.
And then later we do get really technical.
Into
Yeah.
technical things, yeah.
Yeah, it does get quite techie.
Like.
Then after that point, the clients don't really. They sort of glaze over at the drawings because our drawings get all technical.
Yeah.
And we start talking to the contractor.
It's when you start talking numbers and measurements, and I know that's when I switch off. I
Numbers
say
and measurements.
Depths of foundations and things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, reinforced concrete. They start
Yeah.
looking out the window and glazing
Yeah.
over.
When are we getting the fluffy things?
When are we getting the pretty bits on the top?
When am I
Exactly,
getting all
that's
the
what they
plants?
want.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But we then bring contractors in and start talking to them, and
Yeah.
they like all the technical drawings.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
what
real
they built on.
teamwork, isn't it? You have a real team that you have to
Yeah.
pull in to create a garden.
Yeah, and we like doing it like that,
Yeah.
really, because it's more fun.
I think it has to be, really, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
I think so.
It does have to be a collaboration.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a Yorkshire way of doing it because
Absolutely.
there's lots of amazing craftspeople up here,
Yeah.
joiners and dry stone wallers and
Yeah.
stonemasons, carpenters, and so on. And we're really blessed with that
Yeah.
in Yorkshire. So we put a bespoke team together usually
Yeah.
to make our gardens, which is a sort of project management headache, I suppose. But it's also a reflection of the fact that there aren't many up here, and I think this is a good thing. There aren't many contractors, these sort of huge outfits that you get in the home counties,
Yeah.
who have in-house electrician, in-house water feature specialist, in-house carpenter and stuff. There's very few. An outfit that we do use, and they've built 4 or 5 gardens for us, are actually Hacks,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
whose orange name you see on all
see
the skips here.
everywhere here,
That's very
yes.
glamorous, isn't it? on all the skips. But they are fantastic, and they're just out in Ripley up there. And they've built quite a few, because they
Yeah.
do have all those people in-house.
Yeah.
So our big gardens they built.
So tell me about this, your latest meander, because you're returning back to teaching.
Yes.
And you're teaching people how to do what you've just described, this huge, complex job that seems, from what we see on TV in particular, as just doing a quick sketch, bringing loads of people, done in 48 hours, costs threepence halfpenny.
Don't
It's
get me
great.
going.
Well, it's great because it has got people talking and understanding that there's a
It's
skill and an
been
art
great
to
for
it.
that, hasn't it?
It's popularised it, but it hasn't given an accurate picture, and that I know that's expectation management is the hardest element of the job. But what are you doing with your garden school? Talk about that now. This is your free plug for your
This is
for
it.
your,
Right.
your Yorkshire
Get my
garden
script
school.
out.
Yeah.
It's a passion of mine, and I've been thinking about it for a number of years. Since I stopped teaching 15 years ago, it's something I've been wanting to do again. And in a way, I've been sort of holding off until I've had a body of work behind me that makes it look like I'm in a position to teach other people how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm really conscious of that, and I was always looking to my teachers and lecturers when I was at university, kind of, well, have you done what you're
Yeah.
teaching me to do? Maybe that's a bit binary by me, but it was always something that I wanted to see their portfolio and their back catalogue, so that
Yeah.
they were proving that they could actually go out and do what they're teaching. So I felt recently like I've perhaps got to that point. So that was the first thing, and then during my career in the north here, I've been asked several times a year about where to go and study garden design in the north.
Yeah.
And the places that I was able to reel off it was too short a list.
Yeah.
It was just too short a list. There's just not enough. So there was the real appetite and there's the talent in the north and the potential talent in the north, but just not enough of a choice of places to go and study. So pre-COVID, I started on the idea and obviously had to sort of shelve it and have now sort of taken the plunge at Harewood House, who've been fantastic with it all, and setting up a school that really helps folks in the north learn garden design in a way that gets them ready to practice garden design in the north.
Yeah.
Because it is different
Yeah.
to how it works in the south. It is different
Yeah.
in a really good way.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. So we start in September.
Amazing.
Diploma in Garden Design is our main one. It's a year-long course, academic year. And then we have a really nice kind of ever-growing suite of short courses that we're offering as well.
So if you were to give a tip to somebody, a budding garden designer, what would that be?
Learn about plants.
Learn about plants. There you go.
Learn
You
your
heard it here
plants.
first.
And a good way to learn about plants is to handle them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, books are great, and
Yeah.
particularly if you can read books that also have a plan showing where all the plants are, and then a photograph of what that looks like, because you can see how those plants have been physically mapped out. But coming to a show like this is great because you can pick the plant up, read the label, and handle it.
And talk to the grower.
Talk to the grower,
Talk to the grower.
exactly.
There's lots of gardens you can volunteer in as well, and I'm sure
Really good
Harewood
point.
House has a voluntary
Big.
programme.
Big volunteer
I know we
team.
do.
Thorpe Perrow does.
Yeah, so anything like that, I think
Rudding
volunteering,
does.
getting hands
Exactly.
on.
So good. Get your hands in the earth. You
Yeah.
know. Also, you know, if there are garden design practices and garden designers and nurseries and stuff that you can go and like work part time for or do work experience and stuff,
Yeah.
that always helps. And we always have folks coming to us to do that, and we get them out on site setting out planting schemes because you give someone 150 salvias to place out. By the end of that day, they can spot a salvia from 50 paces, and it sinks in. And then for the rest of your life, you know that plant.
yeah.
You know?
You do. I think you become an expert with what you've worked with. Because I know when I've done various different places, I've gone in the greenhouse, I've been in people's gardens, I'm now in the arboretum, and you know, I know about bedding, but I know about bedding because of my time in a greenhouse. It's, you know, not because that's what I do. So it is really what you actually are hands-on with, isn't it?
But it's putting the time in because you know, like the arboretum at Thorpe Perrow, you will know every tree there because you walk past them every day.
Try to.
Try to, yeah.
It's a lot of trees. It's
But-
a lot of trees.
But plants are like people, you know. Anybody in here, if a relative of yours or a member of your family walked past the far side of that hall out there, you'd go, "Oh, look, there's Dad," and stuff. And what, 60 metres away. And so and that's because you recognise the way that he walks or the hat that he's got on or something.
Yeah.
And it's the same with plants.
It is,
If you get to know the shape of the leaf, their habits, and you know the way that they cast a shadow, or you know the gloss on the leaf, small things. It's the equivalent of going, "Oh, that's Dad's walk." You know, the way that a particular grass blows in the wind.
Yeah.
If you get to know those little quirks and nuances of plants, you can spot them from 50 yards away, and it's like getting to know people and their personalities. You know.
Fantastic. Alistair, that has been amazing. We could talk for the rest of the afternoon, but it has been quite a long day for everyone, and I'm sure people have got homes to go to eventually. Can we all give a huge thanks to Alistair Baldwin, our landscape architect?
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.